Hello Year 10 and welcome to your feedback video. So recently you completed two 30-mark assessments. One was on rivers and coasts and the second one was on urban issues and challenges. So the purpose of this video is to go through the longer questions, so the 4 and 6 and 9-mark questions to help you move forwards. So make sure that you've checked your marks first before you attempt this, and you might want to have open the PDF documents which go through these activities, and you might want to do them side by side. So let's start with rivers and coasts. Question 1 then was, study figure 15, a photograph showing the effects of a river flooding in Somerset in 2014. Explain the likely economic effects of river flooding on the area shown in figure 15. So if we were going to cube this question, the question really is here, so the explain is the command word, so we need to say why. So why has this happened? What problems will this create? So we need to develop our points. Okay. Another key word is this one here, the economic effects. So this is to do with money, it's to do with jobs, it might be related to insurance, like the fact that people might put out insurance policies, and businesses. And then it's making us make reference to figure 15. So you're only talking about things that you can see in this figure. So let's move on then to see what a perfect answer would look like. Okay, so you will see here I've put together a perfect answer. Now, you may have also got 4 marks and your answer may not look like mine, but I've tried to include a variety of things that people included or did include but maybe wasn't as developed as it could have been. So the real important bit here is that you use the image, so you use this figure 15, to help you, but then you need to make sure that you develop your points. So the first thing that we need to do on the success criteria is refer to figure 15. So it says here straight away, in figure 15, and I've also said other things such as the Somerset flooding in 2014, which is also what figure 15 is showing us. So I'm going to go through very quickly and just highlight my key. And then we need to identify all of these things. Okay, so in figure 15, one economic effect due to the Somerset flooding in 2014 will be the damage to infrastructure. So I'm already thinking here about an impact. For example, the buildings would have been flooded and electricity would have been cut off, which will result in high costs for temporary rehousing, and people may be left homeless. So you need to put together shelter for the people that houses are flooded, which is going to lead to a lot of money. Now, these are all quite basic points, so I need to develop them. This is an economic impact so I'm going into that, I'm saying because, I'm saying why. It will lead to a decline in the local economy. And I'm now going to say why I think that. Businesses will be unable to operate without power. This could lead to unemployment if they're unable to fully recover from the flood. So I'm developing my point. Let's look at the next one then. Another economic impact of the Somerset flooding in 2014, so I'm already referring to the figure again, is damage to roads. For example, communities will be cut off from normal supplies, people are unable to travel to shops or services and to reach work, because it's very obvious in here that there's lots of flooding, so the roads, I can't even see the roads. So why is this an economic impact? This is an economic effect as a closure of roads may mean extensive detours, so you may have to go a really long route round to do a short distance. That could be expensive and time consuming, so people that are delivering products and goods, that's going to slow them down. People that are needing to rely on emergency services, that's going to slow them down. If you need to get to work, that's going to slow you down. All of this time consumingness is going to cost money. So this could rely on people relying on their insurance, which could result in rising insurance premiums. So if everybody that live within this figure claim on their insurance for some money back, then the insurance policies will go up. So they may have only been paying £20 a month, the next year this could go up to £50 a month, because more people are relying on that insurance policy, which means that this area is quite likely to flood, so they need to make sure that their insurance policy is more expensive. Now, other things, so I haven't done this, but you might want to go through and highlight all the keywords I've done. But another thing to make it really clear for everybody is to break off your P chain. So you have one P chain looking at one point, then when you start a new point, start a new P chain. Question 13 then. So this was moving on to look at coasts. Study figure 11. So this here is figure 11, a photograph showing sea defences at B Sands in Devon. Suggest how the sea defences shown in figure 11 help to protect the coastline. So our keyword here is suggest. That's a very similar keyword to explain. So you're giving reasons why. How do these sea defences help? We need to make reference to sea defences, so straight away we can see boulder barriers. We can see here, although it's not as obvious, a sea wall. So these are examples of hard engineering, and then this is another example of hard engineering. But then a soft engineering example could be beach nourishment, so the adding of sediment to the beach. So we need to give examples of how these things in this figure help to protect the coastline. So we need to know what these keywords mean. So you might want to look back at the keywords for this topic, which you can find on the It's Learning Geography page, and match them to the correct definition, because if you know what these keywords mean, you're more likely to use them in your answer, and then your answer is going to be much stronger. Okay then, so what we have here is a perfect answer. So this goes through and it explains in detail, or gives examples in detail, of all of the different things you would have needed to include in your answer to get the full marks. So what I'm just doing here now is going through and highlighting my key. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, because it says with reference to figure 11, we need to make sure that we make reference to figure 11. So straight away I've said, figure 11 shows. Every single paragraph I've tried to start with these terms in figure 11 to make it really clear to the reader and to myself that I know what I'm talking about. So the first thing that we need to do is give a definition of what hard engineering and soft engineering is, because these are examples of sea defences. So figure 11 shows a mixture of hard and soft engineering. Strategies being used to protect the coastline at B Sands in Devon. Hard engineering strategies are about building artificial structures which control natural processes, whereas soft engineering takes a more sustainable and natural approach. So I'm giving examples of definitions, and then when I move on to talk about these, it just allows me to understand that I need to talk about both hard and soft engineering because they're both visible in this figure. Okay, now I'm not going to do all this with you. I'm going to go through one example with you, and then I would like you to go through and annotate and highlight the rest of the answer using the success criteria. In figure 11, an example of a hard engineering strategy is a sea wall. So I've got a hard engineering strategy here, and I'm talking about a sea wall. A sea wall provides a barrier between the waves and the land. So it's creating a barrier. So if this was the cliff, the sea wall is built like that. So if this was the cliff and the sea was here, it creates a barrier. So this is my sea wall. Okay. These slow down the power of the waves by reflecting a lot of the energy out to the sea due to it being curved. So I'm still kind of describing what a seawall is. So when the waves come in, they'll basically hit against the seawall and then they'll get thrown back out into the sea. So because of that, that then tells us that's going to slow down the power of the waves, and it's going to reduce the amount of power and the amount of erosional power that this wave has. So as a result, there will be less erosion happening at the cliff. So I would like you to carry on reading through this perfect answer and highlighting using the success criteria. Okay then, so let's move on to the next assessment that you did on urban issues and challenges. So you had two longer questions in this assessment. One was a 6-mark question where you had to make reference to a case study, and one was a 9-mark question where you got an additional 3 marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar, and that was worth, you had to include a lot of different case studies in that. So let's break down this question. Using a case study of a major city in the UK, discuss the effects of urban sprawl on the people and the environment. So first thing we need to do is we need to use a case study. So our case study will be Newcastle, which we find in the northeast of England, because it says in the UK. Discuss, so our keyword is discuss, this is a command word, and this is what we have to say, we have to talk about why. So what challenges, we need to develop our points. The effects, so effects can be positive and negative. Urban sprawl of people and the environment. So people, talking about social factors. Environment, we're talking about nature. We're talking about animals. We're talking about pollution. Okay, so for this question, we would need to be able to understand what these keywords mean. So you might want to, again, look at the keyword definitions for urban issues and challenges, which you can find on the It's Learning page, and match them to the correct definition, because these keywords, you might not have used all of them, but it would have been really good if you could have used a couple of them in your answer to make sure that you're looking at the different effects that urban sprawl has had. So the most important one that we're going to do together is urban sprawl. And urban sprawl is this unplanned growth into the surrounding rural areas. So when there's no more space left in the city, so if this was our city, we build out. So we build into the surrounding countryside because there's no space left in the city. Now the question says using a case study, so we need to make sure that we make reference to Newcastle. So using the figure, the 2 figures below, describe the location of Newcastle. So you need to make reference to the continent. It's in Europe. Within Europe, it's in the United Kingdom. And then within the United Kingdom, we can see it's in the northeast of England. And then you might want to talk about the regions within it. So we've got, within the northeast of England, we have Tyne and Wear. Northumberland, Durham, etc. And you might want to talk about the oceans that surround it as well. You could make reference to the size of Newcastle, how many people live there, and why urban sprawl is happening. You might want to talk about the fact that migration has been occurring in Newcastle, which means that their population is increasing. Okay, so for this question then, we had to talk about a variety of points. So thinking about Newcastle, we then had to talk about what problems Newcastle face or what benefits Newcastle face as a result of urban sprawl. So you'd have to make a basic point and then develop it using information and using case study knowledge from Newcastle to help you. So let's do a couple of these together. This will have an impact on social lives. So this is a basic point. We're not going to get many points for that, many marks. So we need to develop this. Well, this is talking about an impact on social lives. Which one of these is referring to people and their lives? Well, the first one's talking about waste, so it might not be that one. The next one's talking about infrastructure and money, so it might not be that one. The next one's talking about traffic and green space, could be that one. The fourth one is looking about people, so People in sprawling communities, so people that live in these new communities that are further away from the urban area, they live further away from their neighbours, so that could lead to isolation. So I would put this one with this, and I would say that this was a negative impact. The next one then says there's a shortage of space for new houses. So if there's a shortage of space for new houses, where are they going to build them? Well, if there's no space left in the city, then they might have to move into the urban areas. So this is talking about this one here. Areas in Newcastle are at risk of urban sprawl, such as North Gosforth, which creates lots of issues, including increased traffic and loss of green space. So this is also a negative impact. Let's do one more together. There has been an extra cost to the taxpayer, so this is also a negative. Now, why has there been an extra cost to the taxpayer? Why do we need to pay more money? Where's this money going? Well, if we look quite carefully, we need to look at things that are costing money. So the first one's talking about waste, so it's not this one. But what about this one here? The public help to pay for infrastructure. So if new houses are built, you're going to need roads to connect them to the city, to the shops, to the hospitals, to the schools. You're going to need waterworks to allow them to have fresh water, to be able to get rid of their waste from the toilets. And they also need money to actually build the houses. So this is going to lead to lots of money people are paying for their taxes, which might lead to a lot of unrest and might make people feel a little bit frustrated that the money's being used is not going to help them. So go through then and complete off the rest of them, and then maybe rank them 1 to 5, which is the most important reason, which is maybe the least important reason that you maybe wouldn't have made reference to if you were writing this answer again. The final question then is the big question. So evaluate the effectiveness of an urban transport scheme or schemes you have studied. So the key word here is evaluate. So when we're talking about evaluate questions, we need to say why it was good, and then we need to say why it was bad. So effectiveness, was it effective? Yes or no? Did it help? Has it helped? Because if it hasn't helped, it's not been very effective. Urban transport schemes. So when we're talking about urban transport schemes, we could talk about Beijing, we could talk about Singapore, or we could talk about Freiburg. Okay, so let's go through and have a look at the question. What we have here then is a perfect answer. And you can see that I've included 2 different examples. So I've got Freiburg here, I've got Singapore here, I have a conclusion at the end, and I also have an introduction about what traffic congestion is and why we need to introduce sustainable management strategies. So I've got an introduction, 1 main paragraph looking at 1 example, another main paragraph looking at another example, and then I have a conclusion. So this here is how I've split my answer into an introduction, main paragraph, and conclusion. So what have I done in my introduction that talks about what traffic congestion is and why we need to improve the traffic schemes within cities. Okay, so traffic congestion can lead to air pollution, so this is a problem. It also leads to health problems, increased journey times, higher fuel consumption, and greater risk of accidents. So these are all the problems with congestion, so cities having lots of cars in them, and this is why we need to update our systems within the city. Accordingly, it is clear that urban areas need to tackle traffic congestion. So they need to introduce effective and sustainable traffic management strategies, such as what has been done in Freiburg, Singapore, and Beijing. Okay then, so let's go through then and look at the first paragraph. So in this paragraph, we need to make sure that we have a point. So we need a point, we need evidence, We need to say why it was effective, because remember this is an evaluate question, and then we need to say why it was not effective. Okay, so where's the point then in this paragraph? Freiburg is one city that has introduced an effective and sustainable traffic management strategy. So I've just given my example of where it's doing this. So this is my point here. So where's my evidence then to back this up? For example, their city trams connect over 168 kilometres of the city's bus routes, and over 70% of their population live within 500 metres of a tram stop. Frequent trams, cheap fares, and unlimited travel all encourage the people of Freiburg to use the transport scheme. So I'm using lots of case study knowledge to talk about what this transport scheme is. Okay then, so now I need to talk about why it was effective. This has been effective, so I'm using keywords from the question, in reducing traffic congestion, as between 1962 and 2020 there has been a 25% reduction in the amount of people using motor vehicles and an 85% increase in the amount of people using public transport. So all of these have been very, very effective. However, has it been fully effective, or have there been negatives of it as well? Well, let's read on. However, this hasn't been entirely effective. So remember that if you don't look at the positives and the negatives in an evaluate question, you won't be able to access more than 6 marks. So why has it not been effective? Well, still 29% of people in Freiburg rely on motor vehicles to move around the city, and only 20% of people in the city take advantage of the tram, which means that actually, even though it's increased the amount of people using this new transport system, it's not as good as it could be, and they need to encourage more people to use it. So I would like you to go through the example of Singapore and find the point evidence, talk about why it was effective and why it wasn't effective, and then read through my conclusion. Now, if you're still struggling, remember that you can ask me any questions, and I hope this is really helpful for you, and I hope it helps you move forwards and understand maybe questions that you didn't do as well on in your assessment.